My brother chose to live the life he led. He was no saint. Because she is a female voice and I'm an unusual male voice. I'm a baritone bass singer. Here I am, baby, practice what you preach. There are payments and rewards for every level of achievement. And that was the problem with our album, why it was so difficult to do. Sure, there's no future as far as he's in the papers and he's doing business and he's earning money.
Diane, we all sang as a group before in school and stuff, and then when we met Barry, we were helping out a girl that he was recording.
And he died suddenly. His money went to his second wife, Glodine. Glodine was so Beyonce before Beyonce.
Barry White's iconic voice and lush love ballads might make you think he grew up in a world of glamour and musical privilege, but his beginnings were anything but golden. Born Barry Eugene Carter in 1944 in Galveston, Texas, Barry's early life was marked by struggle. His parents were never married, and by the time he was 4, his mother moved the family to Watts in South Central Los Angeles. Watts in the 1950s and 60s was a place of poverty, segregation, and racial tension. Barry grew up in a small home with limited means, surrounded by sounds of struggle and survival. His household was filled with siblings, noise, and tension. His mother, though loving, had to be tough, working long hours while raising multiple children without a steady father figure. It was a place where dreams were often crushed by the weight of reality. Violence was common. Opportunities were scarce. And yet, Barry absorbed it all, the pain, the chaos, the rhythms of life, and would later feed into the emotional depth of his music. Before he was a star, before he was a maestro of love, Barry White was just a boy in Watts, trying to survive and find his voice. Amid the chaos of Watts, Barry White found an unexpected sanctuary: music. His mother, Sadie Marie Carter, had a modest collection of classical records, and it was those symphonies and concertos that first caught young Barry's ear. While other kids were consumed with doo-wop or early rock and roll, Barry was absorbing Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, and Chopin. He learned piano by ear, spending hours mimicking what he heard on the family record player. This classical foundation gave Barry a musical ear that would set him apart. By his early teens, he was playing piano in church and experimenting with writing his own music. But perhaps the most life-changing moment was his voice. Around the age of 14, Barry's speaking voice dropped dramatically. The deep, velvety baritone that would become his signature emerged almost overnight. Classmates didn't know what to make of it. Adults did double takes when he spoke. But Barry leaned into it. He realized his voice wasn't just unique, it was powerful. That combination of classical influence and his once-in-a-generation voice became the cornerstone of his musical identity. In a neighborhood full of noise and danger, Barry White was quietly composing a soundtrack that would one day make him a global legend. Despite his growing musical talent, Barry White's teenage years were marred by danger, rebellion, and violence. The environment in Watts during the late 50s and early 60s was unforgiving, especially for young black men. Gangs, police brutality, and systemic poverty were everyday realities. Barry, like many of his peers, found himself pulled into street life. He joined a local gang, seeking brotherhood, power, and protection in a world that offered little safety. But the streets don't give without taking. At 16, Barry was arrested for stealing Cadillac tires, a crime that landed him in jail. It was a pivotal moment. Behind bars, the weight of his choices hit him hard. The violence wasn't just external, it was personal. In 1983, Barry's younger brother Daryl, who had also been immersed in gang life, was tragically murdered. The loss haunted Barry, a brutal reminder how easily their paths could have been reversed. The Watts riots of 1965 were another turning point. Barry witnessed the uprising and its aftermath firsthand. Fires, fear, and frustration boiling over. These experiences didn't break him, but they burned into his memory. Out of this chaos, Barry's voice would rise. But before the music, there was real pain and plenty of it. Sitting in a jail cell at just 16 years old, Barry White faced a moment that would forever change the trajectory of his life. Surrounded by the cold reality of incarceration and the grim faces of men twice his age, he realized he was at a crossroads. That's when a sound came over prison radio, a voice, smooth and haunting, singing "It's Now or Never" by Elvis Presley. That song hit Barry like a lightning bolt. It wasn't just a melody, it was the message. In that moment, he felt something shift inside him. He later said it was the first time he truly believed music could save him. That belief lit a fire that would burn for the rest of his life. Barry decided he wouldn't die in the streets or rot behind bars. He would use his voice, his real gift, to carve out a different destiny. Once released, he dove headfirst into music, not as a hobby, but as a mission. He studied production, songwriting, arrangement, determined to master every piece of craft. That jail cell could have been the end of Barry White's story. Instead, it was the beginning of the man the world would soon come to know. With prison behind him and music as his purpose, Barry White began the long, often thankless climb to the music industry. The late 60s were a golden era for soul music in Los Angeles. But breaking in wasn't easy. Barry started at the bottom, writing, arranging, and producing for others, often without credit. He became an A&R man for the Bronco and Mustang labels, helping scout and shape young talent. Barry had a keen ear for what worked. He could hear potential where others didn't. Still, despite his instincts and hunger, his own early singles flopped. Record executives didn't know what to do with his deep voice, and he struggled to find a label that believed in him as a solo act. Behind the scenes, though, Barry was quietly building his skills. He learned the studio like the back of his hand, how to blend strings, rhythm, and emotion into something magical. It was in those years of near invisibility that he developed the sonic blueprint that would later define his sound. While others chased the spotlight, Barry built the foundation. He wasn't chasing fame, he was studying it, preparing for the moment when the world would finally hear what he had to offer. In 1972, Barry White's career reached a tipping point. It wasn't through his own voice. It began with three unknown singers, Glodian James, Linda James, and Diane Taylor. Barry discovered the trio and formed the group Love Unlimited, seeing in them a sound that could carry his vision to the public. He took full creative control, writing, arranging, and producing their debut album from scratch. The song Walking in the Rain with the One I Love was a breakout hit, selling over 1 million copies. What made it unique wasn't just the dreamy vocals. It was a lush orchestration, the whispered conversation, and the sensual mood Barry crafted behind the scenes. The track marked Barry's first major success and earned him a gold record. That song didn't just launch Love Unlimited, it launched Barry White. Industry insiders took notice. Labels began to see him as more than just an arranger. Suddenly, his signature sound, smooth strings, deep grooves, romantic tension, was in high demand. Behind the scenes, Barry was also falling in love with Glodian James, the lead singer. Their professional chemistry blossomed into romance. With Love Unlimited, Barry didn't just break through, he broke the mold, proving he could be the architect of something new. Following the success of Love Unlimited, Barry White's solo career exploded. He didn't just arrive, he conquered. His debut solo album in 1973, I Got So Much to Give, featured the smash hit, I'm Gonna Love You Just a Little More Baby, and it set the tone for what would become a string of chart-topping classics. Barry's music wasn't just popular, it was revolutionary. He blended orchestral arrangements with soul, funk, and disco, creating a lush, cinematic sound. The Love Unlimited Orchestra, launched in 1973, brought his vision to life with sweeping strings, hypnotic rhythms, and sensual grooves. Songs like Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe, You're the First, the Last, My Everything, and Never Gonna Give You Up made Barry a household name. But his success went beyond the music charts. Barry White became a symbol of romance, confidence, and masculine vulnerability. His deep baritone became the soundtrack to seduction and intimacy for an entire generation. By the mid-70s, he was performing to sold-out crowds across the globe. Gold and platinum records lined his walls. Through it all, Barry remained hands-on, composing, producing, and conducting. He wasn't just a performer. He was a maestro of love, and the world couldn't get enough. Barry White built his legacy as the maestro of love, his music drenched in sensuality, romance, and emotional devotion. But behind the silky lyrics and sweeping symphonies, his real-life relationships were far more complicated. He was married twice, first to Mary in his younger years, and later to Glodian James, the lead singer of Love Unlimited. Both unions were passionate, but neither ended peacefully. With Glodian, Barry shared not just love, but business, music, and family. They had children together, toured the world, and were viewed as a power couple in soul music. But their marriage became strained by the pressures of fame, Barry's demanding work ethic, and eventually growing emotional distance. They never officially divorced, but they did separate and remained so for decades. In total, Barry fathered 9 children from multiple relationships. This created a complex and sometimes contentious family dynamic. While Barry tried to be present for his kids, his career often pulled him away. Some children have spoken publicly about feeling neglected or cut off. So while Barry sang about devotion, his home life was messy and full of contradictions. The man who gave the world love anthem struggled, like many, to live up to them behind closed doors. By the 1990s, the years of stress, long hours, and excess began to take their toll on Barry White's health. He struggled with chronic high blood pressure and morbid obesity for much of his adult life, 2 conditions that became increasingly dangerous as he aged. His weight sometimes exceeded 375 pounds, and by the late 90s, he was battling severe kidney problems. Barry's health began to decline rapidly in 2002. He was hospitalized and placed on dialysis, his body weakened by years of pushing himself too hard. In 2003, he suffered a stroke while awaiting a kidney transplant. The stroke severely impaired his ability to speak and move, devastating for a man whose voice was his livelihood. Despite his condition, Barry remained optimistic. He believed he would recover and return to music, but his condition worsened. On July 4th, 2003, Barry White passed away at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. He was only 58 years old. His death shocked fans around the world, many unaware of just how will he become. Barry's ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean, a quiet farewell to a man whose timeless music had touched millions. The maestro of love had played his final note. After Barry White's death, fans mourned a music legend, but his family was thrust into turmoil. The warm voice that serenaded millions left behind a tangled legacy. What came next shocked many. A series of bitter legal battles that revealed just how fractured things had become behind the scenes. Barry's son Daryl came forward with heartbreaking claims. He alleged that Barry's widow, Glodian James, had cut him out of his rightful inheritance, leaving him nearly homeless. According to Daryl, promises made during Barry's life were broken almost immediately after his passing. But Daryl wasn't alone. Barry's half-sister Denise also sued the state, claiming that monthly payments promised to her had suddenly stopped. Both legal actions exposed deep wounds in the White family. Accusations of betrayal, greed, and secrecy ran rampant. For a man who symbolized love, the aftermath of Barry's life was full of pain. His 9 children, born from different relationships, often found themselves at odds over money, memory, and legitimacy. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about identity. The glamorous exterior of Barry White's life had hidden emotional fractures that were never truly repaired. And when the music finally stopped, those wounds echoed louder than the bass line ever had.